You want to listen to a podcast?
By who?
Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins.
How is it?
The greatest thing I have ever heard in my whole life.
I could not believe my ears.
In this house, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered. And this majority say, be damned with anything else. We're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority and it ain't gonna be that fun. Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. This week, starting out a new week, got lots going on. I want to start out today. We're going to, after the break, we're going to catch up on some of the just really the unruliness, the unworkableness right now that we're seeing in the world. I spoke about this a little bit last week. I want to get back into it a little bit as well in this idea that we've got to get back to a realization of who we are as Americans, who we are as a country, who we are as just citizens of a nation that is free. And we're seeing college campuses right now erupt. And what bothers me the most about the college campuses that are erupting right now, we're going to get into this in just a little bit, is the fact that this is not, really from you listen to the comments from some on the campuses, they don't even know why they're there. Okay, there's something about Israel, or they'll say this, or you have just blatantly anti-Semitic comments coming, and the faculties don't seem to want to address it. We're going to get into this a little bit this morning, talking about that. Also, a couple of interesting items. I think that it's funny. It's funny how circles come around, and we're going to talk about that as well as we go. So, welcome to the podcast. Glad you're here for a Monday. We are experiencing instability at every level. Our government lacks leadership, and Bidenomics has been a disaster. The economy is in a fragile state. Inflation has been a consistent issue. High interest rates have put significant pressure on the real estate market, and there have been major bank failures. And many analysts say a stock market correction is likely overdue. We have global conflicts in Europe and the Middle East that have potential to spread, but gold has soared to record highs even among the tensions. There are so many reasons that Americans should consider investments in gold and silver, and Legacy Precious Metals is the gold standard. I love Legacy Precious Metals because of their zero-hassle, education-first approach. They can help you roll your traditional IRA into a gold IRA or ship metals directly to your house. That's what I do. So go to www.legacypminvestments.com to download their free gold investment guide. And look, I've read it. You need to read it. There's so much valuable information in there. So, friends, now's the time to not roll the dice with your hard-earned money. Find out about the growth potential that gold and precious metals can offer you. Contact Legacy Precious Metals today and tell them that Doug Collins sent you. You might have heard Mike Lindell and MyPillow no longer have the support of the box stores or the shopping channels as the way they used to. They've been part of the cancel culture, so they want to pass the savings directly on to you by having a $25 extravaganza. When Mike started MyPillow, it was just one product company. With the help of his dedicated employees, they now have hundreds of products. Some of you may not even know about that. So to get the word out, I want to invite my listeners to check out the $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-pillow use MyPillows are just $25. MyPillow sandals, $25. Their 6-pack of towel sets, $25. Brand new 4-pack dish towels. You guessed it, just $25. And for the first time ever, the MyPillows with all new Giza fabric, just $25. All orders over $75 will see free shipping too. This amazing offer won't last long, so go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Collins, that's COLLINS, or call 800-986-3994 today. That's promo code Collins. All right, let's dive into this a little bit. A lot's been said, a lot's been going on in recent weeks and months about the issue of October 7th and the butchers of Hamas, the terrorists, which is what they are, pure, unadulterated terrorists, that is often lost in this. And I want to start back in sort of a historical kind of context, not going back, generations, but also just in the last number of years. It almost seems like that people have forgotten that the Hamas has no interest in Israel existing, or a two-state solution, as you hear from the administration and from others, even taking place. It's hard to have a two-state solution when your one-state solution is they are obliterated and we win. Okay, that's the two-state solution that Hamas is. So it's just not really a two-state solution. The people of Hamas were brutally kept under segregation, under subjugation. They have been starved. They have been, barely subsistence in many ways because Hamas leadership siphons everything off, controls it in such a way to accomplish their one and only goal, which is to take Israel off the map. And how does this happen? Well, over the last little bit, I'm wondering how many of these college kids realize what the conditions of Israel have been over the last number of years, decades really, in enduring daily rocket shots, daily mortars, daily issues coming out of the Gaza Strip, coming out of southern Lebanon, from Hezbollah and other parts around Israel. This is not an uncommon sight. It was a very common sight. If you ever traveled to there, you knew people from Israel, this was the commonality. Where else in the world, and I think we've mentioned this before, where else in the world would they allow this to go on? Nowhere. The very simple fact that Israel has not responded in massive ways before now is actually a testament to the patience that has been shown. Now, everybody will focus on saying this is there's been collateral damage, there has been civilian damage. I just simply go back to the fact of, yes, this is war, and it should be, and I think Israel has done probably about as much as they possibly can in the environment in which Hamas chose the battlefield. Hamas is the one who puts their tunnels under hospitals. Hamas is the one who puts their military equipment in civilian areas. This is a common tactic across the Middle East. The Iraqi, ISIS, Taliban, all of them do this because they're cowards. They will not come out and fight in a regimented style or a known force. They want to blend in. They want to incur casualties because they know that if civilian casualties occur, they will benefit from the just general apathy of the world press, who just simply blames the aggressor, if you would, Israel in this case, or America or anybody else, for the civilian deaths without letting Hamas or the Iranian terrorists, Hezbollah, the Houthis, any of them you want to name, who are hide behind women and children because they are gutless, to continue their path. They're not called out. They're not held accountable. They're not done the same way. And yet, in looking at this, Israel has dealt with this for years. They've dealt with it for years in many different ways. And at times, when provoked, have had to respond. The October 7th brutally murder, rape, torture, all of Hamas calculated plan is, as Israel has said, has got to end. Hamas has got to end. This is just not going to continue on any further. It is costing lives. It is costing property. But what we're seeing here in the United States is an ignorance and a growing anti-Semitism that we have not seen many times in this country, around the world, in 60 to 75 years. And that will be going back to World War II. And is Israel perfect? No. Israel is not perfect. Okay, as a country, as a group, as a country, this is not a defense of everything that they do. But it is an understanding in the sense of what is going on in terms of the events in the Middle East, in which you're now starting to see even other Arab countries who are not allowing Iran and others to try, as we saw a few weeks ago, in taking out the drone attack and the cruise missile attacks from Iran directly on Israel. You had other countries, including Jordan and Saudi Arabia and the U.S. and UK and others, who helped block 99% of those weapons. It was an abject failure of the Iranian people, and they can Iranian leadership, and they can tell the Iranian people whatever they want to tell them, but they were simply, as I sort of look at this was as just an abject failure. And you can't imagine the people who are putting out their publicity and their propaganda in Iran knowing the truth and then having to just put out blatant lies that they did something to Israel, which they did not. The campus riots take on a different focus here in the U.S. Free speech, all for it. Okay, and it's free. Listen, we've determined this before. The First Amendment is not for speech that you like. The First Amendment actually is for speech that you abhor. And so if you have this situation in which, though, speech is things that you don't like, when you are making direct threats with your speech, it becomes a problem that needs to be rectified. When you are telling Jewish students on campus, go kill yourself, you Jewish people should be exterminated, that is direct threats. We're not into free speech zone here. We're into direct threats. We're not into freedom of speech by simply taking over a college campus and demanding certain things. This is something that, again, it's just amazing. I want to hear Princeton. We've already seen this happening at Columbia, and Columbia's already caved. They're giving deadlines. Speaker Johnson was there last week, and the failed leadership of Jewish students being tolerated. Princeton University, I saw this in a press release last week that said, Princeton University students are preparing to establish, out of National Review, an anti-Israel protest encampment. And a draft press release. Again, these folks are now drafting press releases. The Princeton Gaza Solidarity Encampment demands. In other words, the pro-Hamas encampment. I'll correct your press release there for you. Is putting pressure on Princeton University administration to divest and dissociate from Israel and to call attention to the university's active contribution to the ongoing genocide and human rights catastrophe. The group is demanding. Now, listen to these demands. These are from Princeton's pro-Hamas solidarity encampment. Princeton call for an immediate ceasefire and condemn Israel's genocide campaign. Number one, this is just sort of ironic to me that they're so worried about getting city councils. They're so worried about getting these things to condemn Israel for not or calling for a ceasefire. This is just a coercive way to get our way. Say what we want you to say, or we're going to, cry like toddlers until you do. And again, these are not going to affect U.S. foreign policy. It's not going to also affect Israel's policy against Hamas simply because, now Princeton has said, you should go to a ceasefire. Not going to happen. Commit to full transparency in its investments. This is where we're getting at a little bit. This goes back to the whole cultural aspect of the DEI culture. The diversity, equity, inclusion culture that they're wanting to see where these investments are. I'll guarantee you this number two, although they tie it to investments in their third block to Israel, the BDS movement there. This is going to go into much deeper. They're going to start going into other areas of investments, of endowments. Remember, this is the endowments for Princeton University. They want to see where they're actually investing, and they want to know how it's being invested, whether they have contributed, not contributed, or anything else. They believe it is their right, as some of these are students probably at Princeton. I will guess a lot of them are not. They want to know what's going on. And if you don't believe me that this would actually expand out further, then simply look to their fourth demand, which was divest from private fossil fuel companies. There you go. This has nothing to do with Israel. This has all your laundry list of liberal wish list, and we're going to just say it all here. Let's go after the fossil fuel companies. Now, again, the country runs on fossil fuel. There is a growing market for renewables, wind, solar, water, hydroelectric, others. Again, a complete turning of the eye to the most effective form of energy that takes away the problems of what is portrayed as the global warming crisis, or global climate change crisis, however they want to describe it this week, and that's nuclear. Now, they'll stay away from nuclear altogether, although it is the way that we need to be investing more in. But they want to get rid of the fossil fuel companies. So number one, remember, they want to talk about transparency in investments. They don't. It's supposedly about the pro-Hamas encampment that they're wanting to end the war of Israel's retaliatory attacks based on them being attacked on October 7th. But now they're going to, while we're at it, let's just fund this out deeper. Here we go. Number 5, disclose and end research funded by the Department of Defense. Okay. Again, we're now willing to take away the research and development that actually helps our Department of Defense, which would actually in turn keep us safe. We're wanting to go after that. Number 6. This is the one that is just 6 and 7 are baffling in many ways. To put these two in and to claim you're open-minded, to claim you're liberal-minded, to claim that you have a pathway of righteousness, if you would. Because the 5th one says, 6th one says, refrain from any form of academic or cultural association with Israeli institutions or businesses. Well, anybody that is in an Israeli educational institute or business, they're not to have any academic or cultural association with. In other words, we don't even want to know who they are. We don't want to have any endeavor with them. We're closing our minds to anything that is associated with Israel because of what we perceive as the wrong of the Palestinian people and the claims that they have. Again, overlooking completely the looks that most of the groups representing the people have no desire to see Israel on the map at all. So again, the first thing they want to do is they want to in some ways segregate out anything done with Israel. We don't want to even discuss it, talk about it. So much for open-mindedness, so much for academic freedom, so much for freedom of association, so much for learning that might actually lead to some truth in your viewpoint, but we don't even want to think about that. The 7th one then turns it around and says we're going to replace this, our bigotry here, and we're going to replace it with what our pet project is, and that is cultivate affiliation with Palestinian academic and cultural institutions. Again, at the expense of Israeli Jewish students, Israeli Jewish institutions. We're going to replace one with the other. Whatever happened to an open organization in which you take viewpoints from all and then you find this out? Now, this is something I'm going to talk about a little bit later in this week on Wednesday's podcast. I'm going to talk about the dangers of popular thinking. And we're going to go through that a little bit from a great book by John Maxwell from a number of years ago that talks about thinking for a change. But think about what they just said there. I mean, look at these demands. Okay, number one, they're portraying this encampment as a free Palestinian, as they call it, the Gaza Solidarity Encampment. Again, pro-Hamas issue here. And everything that they've done so far has said one thing about the ceasefire in Palestine in the West Bank and others, and Gaza, and really this is more Gaza, but it is look at, and then the rest have also went into their ultimate goals of just basically shunning or moving away from one, academic freedom, academic thinking, and these are in the quote Ivy League schools written by this. Number 8, stop sponsoring, facilitating programs like Birthright Israel trips and Tiger Trek Israel in relations with the Tavik Fund. Again, anything you can do to cut associations or work with the Israelis is what they are after. The difference, I think, has been very interesting to look at the difference in how these have been portrayed. In the blue states, in the far elite north, where we have seen the randomization of thought in the sense that nothing is right, nothing is unless we choose to make it right. There's all things are open, all things are discussing, except when it goes against what we believe. Now, it's interesting that you see this in, I think Governor DeSantis in Florida says, don't come here. This isn't going to be tolerated. You will be expelled from Florida schools if you do this. And one of the reasons that I think this is happening in Princeton and Columbia and other places is they are scared. They're not scared of losing their place in school. They're not scared of losing anything else because you have radical left-wing faculty and others who are fighting to make this happen. This is something that's been brewing on these campuses, these far left elite Ivy League campuses for years. It's also why their enrollment is down. It's why I think you're going to see more and more folks moving away from the traditional elite center of the Ivy League because of what they perceived as the prejudice and the radical agenda of the left that is hijacking these organizations. You go down to the University of Texas, and Governor Abbott had immediately called in the state police and others and cleaned this out. I mean, I made a post on social media the other day on Twitter that said the way to handle these folks who are blocking access to airports and bridges is to get the police vans, arrest them, take them away, and put them in jail for trespassing, blocking a roadway, whatever the law is in that state that would be applicable. And this will begin to end, because after a while, you get arrested enough times, you're getting bailed out every time. This is going to put an end to this. And people are getting very frustrated with it. Now, again, how you handle it is the way that you can determine how long this is going to go on. And as long as these liberal bastions in institutions in the Ivy League schools continue to tolerate this kind of racism, this kind of bigotry, this kind of open, closed thinking, this kind of enlightened thinking in which it is only our way and only what we feel is right is going to be the way that we see it, and you have to bend to our rules or we're going to shut you down like infant toddlers. This will be the problem that develops. So again, that's my feelings on this. It's time for the universities to step up the decision and say, look, if you want to have protests, that's fine. If you want to get up and have an honest discussion about how Israel has conducted this war and how Hamas has conducted the beginning of the antagonizing of Israel, and then brutally murdered, raped, and cold blood kidnapping and torture of the folks on October 7th, then have that discussion. But it is not going to be framed in the fact of making the Jewish students on campus feel as if they are the next and to be threatened. This is just absolutely wrong and needs to be stopped. I want to turn a little bit in this one as well. I know it's a hard, deep subject we just talked about, but I want to turn to an interesting one. Millennials and Gen Z. There's an article out recently that talked about it, and I've been seeing this from my sons who talk about where they want to go out to eat. My generation and others, we were probably the least pickiest generation to go eat. I mean, we had everything from Pizza Hut to Applebee's to TGI Fridays to Ruby Tuesdays to, you just sort of Chili's, you name it. This was the, we just went to whatever was there because it became the fast food, kind of sit down fast food, if you would, going on. What's happening now is that, interestingly enough, however, the new generation, millennials and Gen Zs, are following more older people pastimes, probably before the Gen Xers of my crowd and other. Some of the things the pastimes that have been favored more by seniors are now catching on with a younger crowd. And I can say this, I've seen it in some of my son's friends and others. And it says the young people are sleeping more than ever. Bedtimes are shifting earlier, and 5 p.m. is the hot new dinner reservation time. They're joining book clubs, visiting public libraries, and trying their hands at needlepoint, clipping coupons, and listening to jazz. They might even be inching toward retirement home. Millennials are increasingly moving into private golf communities across the country in search of cheap real estate, socialization, and access to activities while working from home. It goes on to talk about that they're less alcohol, they're spending more on health and fitness, and feeling older, in the sense of there's something I thought was really interesting here, that more are having children later or not at all. They're working remotely, being priced out of traditional home ownership, making being in your 20s and 30s feel a lot more like being an empty nester. I thought that was an interesting correlation here. And another one that actually came across that was I saw that Red Lobster is following the trend of several of these other restaurants that I talked about before in trying to stave off bankruptcy. And the reason is millennials and Gen Zers just don't go. They don't go. They would rather go to a restaurant that is a small restaurant owned by a mom and pop in a neighborhood than they would to go to what they look at as the same old corporate kind of food that you would get at the beloved restaurants of the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, the Chili's, the Applebee's, the TGI Fridays, and others. So again, just a fun fact here to end today's Monday broadcast on is you're looking at millennials and Gen Zers becoming portraying more older attributes. Younger folks are saying that there is value to things that have been put in the past, not so old anymore as we go. So with that, that's a Monday wrap here on the Doug Collins Podcast. Glad to have you with us, and we will see you again on Wednesday.